I think we can probably go ahead and start. Um, so I'll introduce myself yet again and my colleague. My name is Aaron Travers, one of the board members of Twisted Spruce, and my colleague that is joining me is Maja Radovanlija, a wonderful guitarist who earned her doctorate from Indiana University. And where are you now based? Are you still in Minnesota or?
Yes, I
Mhm.
teach in the University of Minnesota,
That's right.
Minneapolis.
Yes, in Minneapolis. Wonderful.
Yes.
So, what I think Maya and I want to talk about just the act of collaborating and the different experiences that we've had together. She and I worked on 3 different pieces. All of them have been actually chamber pieces, 2 duos, and most recently a piece for flute and guitar quartet, which is my first writing of a piece for a guitar quartet. Um, but what I want to talk about is kind of the larger experience of collaborating with collaborations between a composer and a performer, and talk about the things that she and I have experienced together. And also, I want to broaden it out to other experiences that we've had, perhaps with other performers or composers. In general, I want to make this more like a discussion. She and I have prepared a few questions to ask each other, but I wanted this to be open for anyone to ask questions at any time. Um, I want it to be more interactive, and I do have some examples to show you. We'll play it by ear, and these examples will be scores and recordings. So, Maya, do you want to begin with a question, or do you want me to ask you a question? It doesn't matter
Um,
to me.
well, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, well, the first thing is, since we've worked on 3 different pieces together, and
Mhm.
what I wanted to ask you is, during any of those collaborations, what do you think what is it about our collaboration that you think worked? And
Mhm.
conversely, what are some things that you think maybe didn't work so well, if any?
Okay. Okay. Well, that is a difficult question,
It
but
is, sorry, yeah.
okay. Well, let me think about. So, first piece was a guitar duo. Um, I think, and that I really like that piece. That is still my favorite guitar duo piece.
The piece is called
Um,
the Red and White
Red
Suite,
and
and
White Suite.
mhm.
Mhm. Well, I think what worked really well is that I had impression that you know exactly what you want from us, and then we did have some discussion, getting the pieces, reading, and back and forth. I think that was a very important part where we give you a feedback what works, and then there was some changing. There was some changing made along the way. I think you were sending one by one movement with duo.
I think so. Yeah, the pieces, just for everyone, the pieces really are based on a traditional Baroque suite. It has 5 movements,
Mhm.
and each movement is
Yes,
entitled like Overture, Allemande, etc. Um,
yes,
mhm.
yeah. I think what worked. I think was that we could perform the piece. It was very playable, and so guitar obviously very well. And I think also what I liked is that you asked, oh, what do you want? So I was really surprised with that, and I think that's not a question that you get from every composer when you commission a piece or ask for a piece to be written. Um, then I don't know. I had impression that you know what are our abilities. Um, I mean, Guido is a classical guitarist from Costa Rica, very
Mhm.
virtuoso like player, and I gave him a little bit more difficult part. So he had some more practicing there, but that was my impression that maybe I don't know. Did you hear us play before, or but the piece was really well written for us, for our duo. So my
I,
impression was
yeah.
that
Mhm.
you knew
I think
that you.
I think I had heard both of you play at one point or
Mhm.
another before I wrote the piece.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. So
Yes,
I was familiar with your abilities.
right.
Um, in spite of the fact that you said the piece is playable, it's still really difficult.
It is very difficult, and I think I didn't perform that piece for a long time because I cannot find another guitarist that can play that part. But it's a beautiful piece, and what I really like about that collaboration with that piece is that I just uh, I think a book of poems by Elfriede Jelinek, my favorite poet, the Austrian novelist and poet,
Mhm,
and you were okay with that. You said, "Okay, I'm going to use it."
mhm.
So
Well, it was a good thing that I like poetry a lot, and reading
mhm.
the poems, I really liked the poetry. I had never heard of her, but she's a terrific poet, Elfriede Jelinek.
Mhm. Right. Well, I think she wrote only two. There are only two books of poetry, and then she started
Hmm.
with novels. But so,
Hmm.
and these are very unusual poems. So I was really happy that you said yes, and then picked one of my favorite poems. And I think Guido's request was that it would be Baroque Suite. So we
Hmm.
were both happy then that you wanted to work with these ideas. I think that that was really great.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, let me show everyone the first page of the score, or the first couple of pages of the score, just to show you what it looks like. This is the overture. And if you take a look at it, it's fairly slow, very stately. It looks like a traditional overture, like something you'd find out of a Bach partita, with lots of dotted rhythms and somewhat scalar-like passages and things like that. And then it follows with a much faster part. Again, very, very traditional. Um, this is probably, would you say, Maya, this is one of the hardest movements besides the jig?
Yes, yes, I think overture was a bit challenging for us because it's almost like unison, or we're playing the same rhythm. Uh, so ensemble-wise, it was a little bit difficult piece to put together. But then I think that's where we had lots of help from you in that
Hmm.
process of rehearsing and trying out how it sounds.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I
So
remember
that
writing.
worked.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry. But yeah, you can see here, for example, in the Allegro, where there are places where the guitars are supposed to be exactly in unison. Um, Usually, one guitar kind of leads it along, but these moments are meant to really bring out specific parts, and it's very fragmented. You can see. So, following that, but but ga but da ga but ga ga but it's tricky ensemble wise, very tricky. Um, should I maybe play a little bit of an excerpt of it, just the first couple pages or so, maybe a little bit into the Allegro? I can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear after all these years.
Right. Okay. I'll go ahead and play from the overture. I think I've already shared sound. Yeah. just kind of cut it off there. But I thought it was a good place to stop. You can all see what I mean. It's really difficult. And the funny thing is, this piece I came off after having written a piece for my friend Nathan Fisher. It was a big guitar concerto, and with that, there was a massive scordatura. 4 out of the 6 strings were retuned, and that one is just horribly difficult in many ways. And Nate did a fantastic job of wrestling with it, dealing with that and actually playing it beautifully. But I decided I'm not going to do any scordatura this time. I'm going to do like a traditional tuning, and I'm going to really try hard not to make this so darn difficult. Oh well. It sometimes happens. But this is why when I brought this to you, I was already prepared to change whatever needed to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of expecting like maybe some extensive revisions here and there. I'll stop my share for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed that the revisions that we did make were like, well, let's change this chord, or let's take out this note, or something like that. They were pretty minor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was why I was like, man, this is great people to work with. They're embracing the difficulty of it, and being very generous. I think that was one of the best things for me as a composer, working with a player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were there experiences you've had working with other composers that were either just as good or maybe weren't so good?
I thought about it really recently also, but I didn't have many experiences like that. There was a piece written for Minneapolis Guitar Quartet that I'm a member of. Amazing piece, so really, really good music by Ian Krause, who is guitarist and composer based. I think he's at UCLA, composer professor, and he writes a lot for LAGQ, so he knows guitar. But this piece was such a long piece without break, so I had to play all the time. A really interesting piece that we commissioned. It was like a theme and variations. You used the theme by Nick Drake, the British singer-songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we chose a song, and it was really amazing piece. But then when I had to memorize that piece, it was very, very difficult. And we didn't perform this piece many times. I think it was just really hard music to put in my head, and then I had to learn all other 3 parts. But so that would be the only piece. And we did also work with composer and took some notes out. So because it was such a densely written piece, really lots of notes for each guitar. So very, very busy piece. So we didn't even have time to turn the page. And he used capo and everything possible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's lots of sound effects. So I think that was the only piece that I thought, oh, I don't know, I don't want to play this piece, in next 2 seasons. I love the music, but because Minneapolis Guitar Quartet we memorize everything. Mostly we play from memory.
Mm-hmm.
That was really difficult piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, my case is that I think I always ask composers that I like music. When I heard some of your pieces, I thought, oh, I really want to play your music. I want to play music by Aaron. And so then I asked you to write a piece. Mm-hmm. And then I would keep asking you to write pieces because I love all the music that you wrote. So
that's terrific.
Right.
And I've really enjoyed your playing. It's very technically precise and very musical as well.
Okay, so I'll keep asking you to write pieces.
Okay, great. Good. I'll keep writing. I think we are actually we're going to start.
We do have a new one.
Starting a fourth project together.
Right. Yeah. Guitar and oboe. Mm-hmm.
So just to let everyone know that suite was written back in 2010. So it's old by those standards. And so my my way of writing for guitar, I think, has changed a little bit in my way of thinking about the ensemble. Um, the next project we worked on was in 2000. I think it came to me in 2016, and I think I finished the piece in 2017. It's a piece called Box Gardens. It was where Maja and her colleague Linda Chatterton, flutist, were looking for a duo to perform at, what was it, the Contemporary Music Festival in Havana? Is that right?
Yes, I think we were preparing for a new music festival in Havana, Cuba, and we wanted to have newly written piece.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the occasion to ask, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this is, of course, was my first guitar flute duo, but I've written for both instruments separately. Um, and I don't recall if you had a specific idea in mind for that one, other than that perhaps it could be multiple movements. I think it was pretty open at that point, right?
Yes, yes. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember that there were some requests.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we said that it would be a few movements, 10-minute long piece or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think that's what I gave you. It was about 10 minutes or 11 minutes or something.
10 minutes altogether, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the piece turned out to be 3 movements long, and each one is relatively short. And I knew I also wanted to make each one be, something about either dance music or something about music that's not in the traditional Western canon. At the time, I was learning Argentine tango. I was learning to dance it, and I got very familiar with the music, and I sat with it for a number of years. And so a couple of pieces I wrote were influenced by that, and so I decided to bring some Argentine tango into the piece. It's actually in the first movement. And then the other 2 movements, the second movement is a kind of a slower one, which I think you said, Maja, was your favorite one.
Yes, I really like a second movement because there's certain freedom there, and so it's almost like improvisatory, and I really like to improvise. And then it did remind me of flamenco. I was thinking a little bit of all the chords. I mean, just a little bit. Cannot say it's flamenco. But
yeah, some of the dissonance of the chords, and also the extensive rasgueados.
Yes, there was some flamenco techniques. It was just a really fun one to work on with Linda also, that we could have some freedom there and decide on some things. That's why it's favorite.
Right, yeah. And that movement is also a little bit based on shakuhachi playing, shakuhachi music. And I think what I'll probably do is I'll play the entire movement, because we have enough time, and it's not very long. It's like 4 minutes or so, just to show you all how it's put together. And then the last movement is probably a little bit weird. I don't know exactly. The idea just came to me of these extremely rapid chords. It's very, very fast. Tick, 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 tick. It's very all, it's constant 16th notes. And it has these interesting combinations of scraping on the guitar strings, coupled with the flutist doing these kind of slower jet whistles. And so the combined sound actually sounds like a perfect composite of the 2. In a way, it's almost like the guitar is trying to imitate the sound of the flute at that point. And it's an effect that I've used, I think, in the guitar quartet and flute piece that I recently wrote. But the other thing that was kind of fun that I think you guys liked was the use of some vocalizations.
Oh yes, in the third movement. Yes, yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah, and I think I got that idea honestly by listening to a song by the Pogues. It's called Planxty Nowell Hill. I don't know if you know their album Rum Sodomy and the Lash, the great classic Pogues album. My kids and I love to listen to it, and I was like, I tried to turn the radio down, turn the car radio down on all the bad words, which happened a little bit too frequently. But that's an instrumental one, and toward the end of the instrumental, the players all starts going, yip, these really high
Mhm.
pitched kind of sounds, and I thought that was a lot of fun. So I thought I'd go ahead and put that
That
in
was that
there.
was really fun. And then whenever we performed that piece, the movement was really favorite. I remember we were at NPR announcing our touring and going to Cuba, and that was really just we just talked about that movement after we
Hmm.
performed that.
Okay.
Favorite.
Hmm.
What I really like about that movement is that you're using muted chords, also something that is not so usual. And I wanted to ask you, where did that idea come from?
It came from just fiddling around with my son's guitar. My son was learning how to play guitar. Actually, he still takes guitar lessons. He's doing a lot of. He has two teachers now. One of them teaches classical guitar and some flamenco, and the other one teaches tango.
Oh, nice.
Um, and so I've gotten, actually, it was working. His tango guitar teacher. I worked with him on some moments in the first movement. There are some like
Mhm,
jumba techniques, like this, like
mhm,
sliding on the lower strings, and then boom da
mhm,
boom da,
mhm, mhm.
that I incorporated into that movement. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of like trying it. Like, let's see what happens if I mute like way up here. Does it change the tone a little bit? It does a little bit, but
Mhm.
maybe
Yeah.
what I'll do is I'll play both movements real quick. And again, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat or just shout them out or whatever. Um, I'll try to keep my eye on that. But let me go ahead and share the screen again. And I'm sorry, let me go grab the file. Well, let's go ahead and, since you like the third movement too, let's go ahead and play the second and third movements. The third movement's very, very short. So we'll start with the second movement then. Oh, hold on a second. I totally really messed that up. Totally messing this up. Hold on a second. Come on. Here, hold on a second. I'll do it this way. There we go. Ready? Second move. I'll stop there for a moment. Does anyone have any questions about that one? I mean, I recall, Maya, that we got rid of this little trill here because it was just getting in the way, and I don't know why I put it there. I thought I was being clever, I think, and I totally failed. So
Yes, I remember that we did some little changes like that. It was for this moment because of some bar chords. I remember I was just my left hand couldn't do it
oh,
with the bar chords and then trill coming after. And I did try with lots of
right.
different things and fingerings.
Hmm. But it wasn't it wasn't worth the hassle.
Right, then we decided to take it out. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Colin and Ronnie and Abby for your cousin, and also Holden. Yeah, thanks for the mention of Nikita Koshkin. I know a little bit of Koshkin's music, but not enough. I need to go and check that out. And yes, Nate, I will play the third movement because it's short and it's really quite fun. But I mean, most of this piece actually really came from. I mean, this movement came from the opening chord, and this one I just sat with my son's guitar and thought, well, what would happen if I put my fingers here? And it's like, oh, that's a really nice chord. Or I think it was just I want to make sure I'm gonna have certain open strings and 3 stop strings, or to see what would happen, or if I just basically just put them all roughly in the same fret. And I was like, oh, that's a really nice sound. And so I built most of the harmonic material out of that chord. But a lot of you can already see that, mostly the guitar is kind of an accompaniment to this flute solo. There was quite a bit of interaction between the two. Sometimes they're sort of imitating each other a little bit, or sometimes they're sort of pulling apart or compressing together on certain key moments, like here, or especially here, which leads into the next sort of sub scene, or whatever you might want to call it. But yeah, well, this is where I was like really kind of having fun with bar chords and things like that. Okay, well, let me let me go ahead and talk about the third movement. This one actually has a slight scordatura. The low E string is tuned down a half step, and the G string is tuned down a whole step to F. And part of the reason for this is that a lot of this uses mostly open strings and harmonic chords across all strings, so they're all playing on the exact same fret. And I also wanted to make sure that I got harmonic chords that did not sound like the traditional tuning of the instrument. As a result, again, because of that tuning, most of the harmonic material is derived from that tuning. So lots of like tritones stacked with fourths. In fact, if you look at the tuning, it's basically the same trichord stacked on top of itself and separated by a whole stem. Right? It's something that I like to do a lot, of basically kind of focusing basically deriving more harmonic material out of a very small cell of notes. And it keeps me in check, first of all, and second of all, it's kind of fun trying to see how much I can get from so little stuff. So this is an example where you can see the jet whistle combined with the scraping sound, and there are some knocking sounds too. So let me go ahead and play through it. I gotta find it. It should be there. Here we go. All right, ready? This is the third movement. Yeah, so
It's really fun. I remember how fun it was to practice this piece.
Mhm.
That was maybe the first time I realized, oh, well, I cannot strum chords as fast as flutists can play their fast notes. So
Mhm.
that it took some time for us to find the fastest possible tempo that we can both manage. It was
Yeah,
really fun.
but no, that was about the right tempo. That was good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very it's a rhythmic piece, plain and
Mhm.
simple. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of actual melodic content in this, which is actually a big change for me. Most of my music, I think, is very melodic.
Mhm. I remember with this movement that you said you wrote a kind of easy part for guitar. And it was easy because I just had this scordatura and muted chords and lots of open strings, but it's super
Hmm.
fun for me also. So I was really happy with this movement. I remember that. So I
Hmm.
don't have to practice too much and it sounds good.
I know. I think this is the one time where I kind of got that right. Holden says there's a specific technique intended by the flute pits. There is a particular kind of technique, there's a particular kind of embouchure that one uses and a specific kind of articulation. It's a little bit more noisy. And honestly, with the pits on the flute, it works better in the lower register than the upper register. So to be honest, once you get up here, like above the staff, pizzicato articulation kind of gives out. And so she kind of, I think Linda did a really good job of faking that. Faking the articulation, but you can tell that some of the 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 pitch actually kind of disintegrates up in the upper range there. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're writing for flute. The Pitt's technique really only works in the lower range or basically within the staff. And Luke says, does it really say eyes wide open? Yeah, it
Oh, it
does.
does, yes. Yeah, that was the interesting part where we had to figure out what do we do there. And I remember that Linda was like,
Mm-hmm.
what should we do here? But then in concerts, we kind of figured it out. It was really fun. Just
Mm-hmm.
stare at the audience and wait.
Yeah, there's something kind of
Really fun.
um, there's a theatric to it,
Mhm.
and also there's an intended humor in this. So I
Right.
wanted this idea. I don't know, I wouldn't know what I was thinking exactly, but maybe that the idea that either you would be looking at each other like players normally do, and as you do your hi, you sort of slowly turn
Mm,
to the audience with your eyes wide open, as if you're daring them to do something or trying to
mhm.
scare them.
Right, right. I remember that was your instruction. So I think I asked you. So what do we do here?
Yeah, I don't think I had a very clear idea what was to happen. I kind of wanted you to just
Mhm.
decide on your own.
We have another question here. Let's see.
Let's see. Ronnie says, "I'd love to hear a bit about the form and how you organize the material in these two movements." And Jake says, "Love that." Following on from something Colin
Mm,
mentioned, is the guitar written at played pitch or sounding pitch? Okay, I'll get to both of those.
mhm.
In terms of the form is really simple. Um, the Actually, I think that for me, the form of the second and third movement is actually, you know what? The form of all three movements is the same. It's an ABA. It's just that when you return to the A, it's different in a way. I would say the second movement is maybe more kind of like an ABC, although here's the slower C section, but it's actually very much derived from the opening section. So formally, it's really simple. Um, there are some things that I did in the third movement. Um, for example, here the middle section is very distinctive. It's much more fragmented than the first section. But there are these interruptions from the first section material. Um, and then when the A section comes back, in a way, it starts with the second phrase of the A section, with these other interruptions coming in, and then it returns to the opening material of the whole piece. So I kind of, in a way, I kind of took the A section and sort of reversed it a little bit.
Also, interested in how you seem like you very carefully measured out how long each like bit is in balance to the rest of the material, and that works really well in terms of like it's not you used it sort of to the right amount so that it has enough surprise everywhere. And I'm wondering how you measured that in any way, musical or otherwise.
I think some of it was a bit intuitive, but I tend to work when I'm dealing with something like this, where there are definite lengths of phrases. I'm really simple in terms of mathematics, so a lot of it's just sort of adding 1 or 2 beats or something like that. Like I believe that most of music can be reduced to certain processes. You know, like an accelerando is a process. It is a process of going from slow to fast. Crescendo is a process from going to soft to loud. And you can combine these processes together, or you can create processes that maybe in general go, maybe they accelerate or they elongate, but maybe they don't do it in a completely linear fashion, you know? Like the stock market generally goes up, but there's a lot of twists and turns, right? And the Chinese stock market, you don't know what it's going to do. But anyway, so this one, I think, but 1 2 1 2, so 2 2 1 2, 1 2 2, 1 2 2 1, basically. So in a way, this is sort of this phrase is a kind of truncation of this one.
Yeah, and the jet whistle thing seemed quite well balanced as well with the semiquaver bit too.
Yeah, the jet whistles, you have to be careful because you can't go immediately from a jet whistle to a normal note, because the embouchure has to be completely changed when you're doing a jet whistle. So you must provide them enough space in order to change the embouchure. This is what the knocking is for, in a way. It helps to provide that space. But it also becomes now part of the structure, part of the material. I mean, the other thing is the vocalizations. When I put them in, I was like, it sounds right, but I don't know why. And now I know it's because the height is a replacement for the knock, and the yip or hype is a replacement for the jet whistle. So it's just it's a variant of sounds that we've already introduced in the movement.
Yeah, I mean, in the intervention in terms of like how much you used it, seemed to kind of refresh the that kind of texture quite well. Was that measured as well, or just as well intuitive in the?
Was which measured?
So did you measure as well, like the number of bars or beats from the beginning of the semiquavers to the jet whistle, and then in each bit that it comes in?
I think a little bit. I don't think I was very specific about it. I think where I was more specific about the timing of things was here. So the number of bars here, or the number of beats, I think, from here to the first interruption, I think I'm trying to, does it increase or decrease? I think it decreases, actually. So you start out with a slightly longer section, and then interruption, and then slightly shorter, I believe, and then interruption.
Right.
And then a little bit shorter, and then interruption. So that's another example where basically it's compressing over time.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Very interesting.
And I think Maja did answer Jake's question about the scordatura. And this one is really easy in terms of the notation. I decided to just write it at pitch. I don't remember if I asked you about that, Maja. Did I? About what you preferred?
I think maybe you did, and then I looked at it and I realized that those are all the same chords just moving around. It won't be difficult. I didn't have to really think about scordatura.
But I think if I had a more extensive scordatura written in a slightly different way, I might have transposed it instead. But you know what? Sometimes it depends on the guitarist. one thing that Maya and I brought up when we were talking about this presentation was the idea of the string scrape. Um, when I wrote the guitar quartet and flute piece, which I can show you real quick, it's called Forests and Barrios. I have quite a few guitar scrapes here and there. And I remember Joe Hagedorn, the director of the quartet, was nervous about doing these scrapes at all.
He was worried about it.
Yeah, he was worried about his nails and wanted to use a plectrum instead, but it becomes kind of difficult because you have to keep picking up and putting down the plectrum, and it has a different kind of effect. But you didn't have a problem with it, and right?
Right. Yes. I think I found a way where I can do it with back of my nails, with part of my nails that I don't use really. So, the nail part, the part of my nail that I use to make the sound is not affected. And that I remember we had a pretty long discussion in quartet rehearsal, and I was showing Joe, you can do it this way. Then finally he found his way. I think he decided to use left hand and nails on left hand or something like that. But nails, I mean, that lots of guitarists are very sensitive, and if you damage your nails in the middle of the piece, that can be kind of tricky. But the way I did it, I would just use, I would have my hand on the side and just use this part of nail that I don't really use for producing nice sound.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And I usually just relegate it to the lowest two strings, because those have those produce the most sound with the nail scrape. Of course, the upper three strings don't produce any of that because they're not wound.
Right.
Let's see. I was going to ask you something. I think one of the things we talked about was, I'll stop my share for a moment. One of the things we talked about with the dynamic of working with composers, working with ensembles, and the way the ensembles function, like a duo, for example. I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion, but I always thought the power dynamic in a duo is a little bit more equal. But as soon as you get more than two people, the power dynamic shifts to one person kind of leading it.
Right.
And the more people you add, the more discussions and the more I guess slightly bureaucratic it gets. Right.
I mean, I remember the scraping thing. It was really a very engaged discussion, to the point where Joe decided that we're not going to do scraping. And then it took a little time for me to convince him that it's okay, it sounds really cool. And I did it. So.
Well, thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. It helps to have an advocate. But I mean, I think as a composer, I have to kind of think about those sorts of things. With a duo, it's a little easier. You can negotiate things between, and it's a lot easier to have more of a back and forth, but between composer and performer. But with a larger group, it can get a little dicey, and sometimes you got to be I have to be a little more careful. I don't know how careful I was with this quartet, because it's got a lot of weird extended techniques and things. But are there any other questions? I know we're kind of running a little bit toward the end. What I thought what I might do is tell you all a little story, a cautionary tale about a collaboration that I screwed up on badly. And this was when I was writing this gigantic organ piece. I won this award, and I was supposed to write like a 20 to 25 minute organ piece, which is, I think, a mistake from the beginning. And then the other mistake is that they had 5 organists who were going to premiere it or play it, which I think in a way is another mistake, because it's really hard to collaborate with 5 different soloists. That's why I used to tell people, never write a solo piece for more than one person, which is a little bit of a joke, but that's kind of what happened to me. So here's where I screwed up. I initially asked them all, like, I had these ideas about what I might do, and I asked them a bunch of questions about what sorts of things that they like to do and all this stuff. And they gave me feedback, and it was going great. And then I stopped communicating altogether, and I just wrote the piece. And I think I had a moment of hubris, thinking that, since I learned to play how to play organ, I thought, yeah, I can do this, that it won't be a problem, and these are really good players, so I can push them a little harder. And by the time the piece was finished and I sent it to them, they all hated it, and they also believed that I would not change it, or that I didn't have time to change it, or I had no desire to change it. And they got very angry. Some of them got very angry at me. As a consequence, the piece was never played. And it kind of languished for a while. And I decided, man, I literally looked at what I had done wrong. I should have communicated more with them. I should have sent them sketches, and then I could have avoided all these problems, but I didn't. And I was saved by another organist who had heard about this piece from a friend of mine, and who was really into playing extraordinarily hard organ pieces. And he approached me and wanted to play it. And so I said, you know what, that would be great, but you know what, I want to rewrite it. And this time I want to do it right. So I started rewriting passages. We talked about it. I sent him some sketches of my rewrites, and he gave me feedback. And I think a year after that, he performed it. And he later, a couple of years later, he recorded it. And it's out on CD now, on the Innova label, I believe. So it got rescued by one person, which I'm extremely grateful for. But it's a great example of precisely what not to do. It's a veiled success story. I think it turned into one, but not by me. I wasn't the one who made it a success. What ended up making it a success is learning from my mistakes. So that's why I'm imparting this all to you. And this is why I think my relationship with Maja has worked out well, because I've learned from those mistakes, and I've been very humbled by it. So I guess, yeah, a little bit of a failed success story, Abby. Okay, we're kind of at the end. Any other last minute questions or comments? Okay.
Well, thank you so much, both, for presenting. It was wonderful.
Well, no problem. Thank you, Luke. And thank you all for listening.
Yeah.
And thank you, Maja. Thank you, Maja, for being here.
Yes, both of you. I believe Miles has a
Thank you.
question in the chat too.
What is the name of the piece if we want to look it up and listen? Oh, the piece is, I'll put it in the chat. It's called Exodus.